Queensland is being inundated and we're being warned there's much more rain on the way.
Cars swept away in flash flooding.
Vital transport links still underwater.
With thousands of panicked shoppers swarming supermarkets right across the country.
The supplies are getting short.
Panic buying has fueled fears of a food shortage, but farmers promise we won't run out if the supply chain remains intact.
Logan is a major growth corridor in southeast Queensland. Over time, the rich alluvial soils have been developed to manage increasing population growth. For Logan, this means accessing food from further away and food disadvantages that are defined by postcode. Despite the loss of arable land and experience of food disadvantage, food resilience in Logan happens through a vibrant cultural diversity of food cultures and a variety of food supply avenues. Drought, floods, cyclones and pandemics disrupt our ability to get our hands on and consume fresh, healthy food. People say, resilience is about withstanding an onslaught, or it might be bouncing back to the normal that was. For me, it's about reimagining our place in the world. How are we going to reimagine our relationship with food in a way that works for all of us, not just some of us? When we think about food resilience, we're asking, how do we ensure that when drought hits farmers, when roads and infrastructure can't be used due to flooding or other disasters, when panic buying empties supermarket shelves, how do we continue to have access to fresh food? Australia is at risk of losing the next generation of farmers and food providers if it can't innovate within the food production model, whether growing it or distributing it. So what do we do in times of crisis? Place-based and relocalised food production and distribution have consistently proven their ability to deliver the goods.
I think there's a really big opportunity for people to grow more food in their local area, and we've seen with some of the natural disasters like fires and floods, etc., how access to local food is so important. But not just that, really, I think the mental health benefits, that people actually have something to do, somewhere to focus. Growing something gives you a lot of satisfaction and I think a reason for hope as well. So there's at least 25 active members growing food here. They share the produce together, they water each other's gardens. It's a real community type feel. And we actually have over 40 people on a waiting list for more space if we're able to get it.
Planning is a lot about land use. It's about how do we choose to live on the land. My kids grew up with food being under their nose. It's just a normal part of life. And that's just in the suburban backyard.
The Mini Farm Project is a charity that converts underutilised spaces into urban farms, and we produce food for those in need, and that includes organisations as well. We've partnered with Meals on Wheels to lease this space, which is 2 blocks, which is half an acre. So here we fit in under the Mill and Farm banner and we connect into Meals on Wheels. We may have another farm that has a different story where we connect in with Oz Harvest, and we actually have an aquaponic farm, so we're growing fish and some greens as well. So we have a variety of different methods of growing, and we have a variety of different stories that we can produce. The future of food is moving into bush foods and replacing a lot of our European crops with replications in the bush foods. They're going to last through the droughts, they're going to last through the climate change, they've been here before. And when we're talking about the climate cycles, those food items have been here for 40, 50,000 years and they will survive. Our food crops that we grow now from our European cultures and other cultures are going to have a hard time.
I think being a mum, it was important to me to normalise growing food for kids.
Yeah.
I'm a strong believer that it takes a village to raise a child, and like adversity, food brings people together, and I think that's pretty special.
I think there's a conversation there that needs to be had and ramped up around ensuring that these micro pop-up gardens that may be very temporary or may exist for years can support us as our local communities deal with climate change.
1/3 of the world's food is wasted despite being acceptable for human consumption. On average in Australia, over 300 kilograms of food goes to waste per person every year. Rescuing and redistributing food that would otherwise go to waste is another way communities can look at breaking down food disadvantage in their local communities. Anthony, where does OzHarvest get its food from?
We rescue food from all over the place. So for a long time, caterers were really big supporters and donators to us. The Woolies and the Aldis and other supermarkets of the world, fresh produce departments or fresh produce sellers. Of course, at the moment, in response to COVID, caterers aren't giving us very much, nor are airlines, and restaurants dropped off for a little while. I think that became really apparent during the early stages of the COVID pandemic, where people or locations were not food resilient. We saw as borders closed, both international and international, there were massive disruptions to food supply and supply logistics. We didn't have resilient supply lines. Combine that with absolute panic buying when people got wind of supply chains being disrupted. There was an absolute lack of resilience, especially for fresh produce, which doesn't have a real timeliness to its delivery to a supermarket for an individual, and then on to us to then rescue and distribute to charities which are extremely reliant on us.
Resilience is a shared responsibility.
Yes.
You know, and it's on all of us to step up in whatever way we can to share in our own resilience and how we want to move forward with these challenges. Access to local food and those smaller food supply chains is about having a plan B and a plan C and a plan D.
And that's contingency, really, in a nutshell, isn't it?
Exactly. It's about having options.
Options and choice.
Totally.
And that choice has to include the ability to step outside your own immediate household and be able to collect food that supports your family.
Absolutely.
You can have the tins and the pickles in the cupboard, but unless you've got the vitamin C and the nutrition coming from fresh fruit and vegetables, we know it doesn't work so well.
Food resilience is about options. To move beyond the feeling that we are under siege or in a crisis and relying on goodwill. These are signs of a stressed and inadequate food system. Food shapes our relationships and our identities. It is fundamental to human life. We require nutritious food to function, feeding our bodies and minds, feeding our families and our communities. And when food is grown and accessed locally, it also feeds our local economies, enabling multiple resiliencies.